Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I support the motion, in particular the statement which reads that this House should be the place where legislative decisions of this nature should be made. And there has been a number of contributions from learned members, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take the debate into a different area, because I read with interest the Political and Constitutional Reform Committee's voting by convicted prisoners summary of evidence report. And in paragraph 4 it stated, "We took the evidence summarised in this report with a view to exploring the current legal position, not with a view to questioning whether extending the right to vote to convicted prisoners in certain circumstances would be philosophically, morally or politically justifiable." And I think those are important words, because I believe that as parliamentarians those are exactly the types of judgments that our constituents would expect us to use in this chamber. And however sophisticated or complicated the argument gets, this is about a basic belief system on whether or not giving prisoners a right to vote is right or wrong. And I take the view that someone who has committed a serious crime or a series of crimes, who has been incarcerated, apart from the exclusions mentioned previously in the debate, that those individuals should lose that particular right. And that's a position that I am not prepared to flinch from. And I'll tell you why. Because the general public may not wish to discuss the details of the principle of proportionality put forward by Aidan O'Neill, and they might not be concerned too much about Lord Mackay's conclusion that the right to vote is not an absolute right. But they know instinctively when something is right or something is wrong. And giving prisoners a vote is something that I believe they believe is wrong. And I am sure the honourable gentleman says, have I asked them? And I'm just about to go into that, Mr Deputy Speaker. I have asked them, because I wanted to test my belief on whether my view that it was wrong was actually taken on board by members who elected me in my constituency. And the reaction you get from people is very similar. You explain the issue, and then there's a pregnant pause, because actually people think you're just about to give them the punchline in a joke, as opposed to telling them of an issue that we're going to be debating in Parliament. Then a look of disbelief descends on their faces at the very thought of giving criminals the right to vote. And I was very lucky earlier this week, along with other honourable members in this House, to have visited Santos, to visit as a member of the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme. And there we saw the young men and young women who are going to be prepared to be the officers in the future. And in around 6 months' time, they'll be serving in Afghanistan. And I also took the opportunity of the litmus test of asking those fine young men and women if they believed that giving prisoners a vote was correct. And to an individual, they said no. And I think it's very important that we listen to them as well. And it's interesting, if you also look at the debate, to listen to the people who are against it. Liberty's case is to argue that to deny prisoners a vote would be to undermine the Human Rights Act. On the contrary, I believe the reverse is true. And the Howard League for Penal Reform suggests, somewhat ludicrously in my opinion, that extending the right to vote would be a natural progression of ECHR. I disagree with that completely. And an example, Mr Speaker, in my view, of when you over-egg an argument, it becomes risible in its content. But what do you say to the people who think that we're hyping this up, and the fact that we're talking about people who are rapists, paedophiles and murderers will get the vote? Well, I looked up 3 examples of people who have been imprisoned for less than 4 years. And we're going to give Corey Smith the vote, 19. Corey Smith threatened to stab commuters on the Central Line in a 3-week crime wave in December, and he was convicted for just under 4 years. Or the Mazambi family, who were convicted, 3 of them convicted for less than 4 years, who stole money, £500,000 from Comic Relief, money that should have went to good causes. Or the motoring case, Jonathan Francis McGonigal, who, 23 years of age, killed a 25-year-old pedestrian while being drunk in charge of a car, who was sentenced to less than 4 years. Are these the type of people, Mr Deputy Speaker, that should be given the vote? Now, yes.
I'm not, if I speak, going to argue for a blanket right to vote, but how does the honourable gentleman explain the fact that in most other countries that are subscribers to the Council of Europe, the same isn't the view, and the right to vote is given to some prisoners? What's the difference between the British culture and the rest of Europe, that people actually have a very different view just a few miles away?
Because we're different. And if you speak... Well, just about to give you an answer. The difference is that in terms of Northern Europeans' view in life can be somewhat different to the view of Southern Europeans in life. They're entitled to their point of view, as are we, and as are we in this House to make decisions on these particular matters. So I dismiss that particular point because this is about interpretation of the ECHR and how it fits into... You've had your chance, I've given you an answer, and how it is incorporated into UK law. And I was mindful of the words of Louis D. Brandeis, who was Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in the United States of America. And that gentleman said that if we desire respect for the law, we must first make the law respectable. And I think that's an important point which you should remember. Mr. Speaker, laws which do command the support of members in this House are being manipulated, in my opinion, in unacceptable ways. It's perverse to argue that those who break our laws and who have been incarcerated for doing so should be given the right to vote. And there's a burden of responsibility of members in this House to speak out. I've done so today and I'll be backing the motion later today.